We call to order the Colerain Township Zoning Commission meeting for Tuesday, December the 17th, 2019. It is 6 p.m. If everybody would stand, please, and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Mr. Urbanzik, if we could have roll call, please.
Mr. Faring.
Here.
Ms. McMullen. Mrs. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Westfall.
Here.
Mr. Brody.
Here. With one person being absent, we have seated Mr. Herring. I had it in my mind and I couldn't remember.
It's all right.
Before we move on, if everybody would please silence their electronic devices for the remainder of the meeting. And all of the microphones are on for the commission and staff. First order of business is to look at the minutes for November the 19th, 2019. Are there any changes or adjustments, additions, or deletions? Hearing none, could we have a motion to approve them?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes as presented.
Second. Could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Faring.
Yes.
Mr. Gehring.
I have to abstain. Wasn't here.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Westfall.
Aye.
Mr. Grody.
Yes. Okay, so those minutes are approved. If you would look at the minutes for the special meeting on December the 3rd, 2019, are there any changes, additions, deletions, corrections to be made? Hearing none, could we have a motion, please, to approve them?
I'll make a motion to approve those.
Who made the motion? Mark? Okay. Could we have a second, please?
I'll second that.
Okay. Could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Faring.
Yes.
Mr. Gehring.
Again, abstain. I wasn't here.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Westfall.
I abstained because I wasn't here.
Mr. Brody.
Yes. Okay, those minutes are approved. The next item on the agenda is public address, and this is the portion of the meeting where anyone who is present in the audience would like to address the commission about any items that are not on the agenda. So does any of you four want to address the commission about any topic not on the agenda? Okay, hearing none, we will move on. We have no final development plan this evening. And we move on to item 5, public hearing, which is case ZA 2019-083547 Springdale Road. It is a zone map amendment. Staff, do we have a presentation?
Yes, we do. This item comes to you as a planned development district rezoning. There'll be a zoning map amendment. The purpose of a planned district is to allow for flexibility in the zoning requirements, where the result will be a higher quality development. It also provides for and locates suitable recreational facilities, open space, and other common facilities while preserving the existing landscape to the greatest extent possible. It also encourages sound planning principles to the arrangement of buildings, preservation of open space, utilization of topography and other site features. Also, to obtain creative and coordinated designs in harmony with the surrounding uses and allow procedures supplemental to those applicable in other use districts to establish under which development plans are particularly designed to meet the objectives of this section. And lastly, to allow for the creative development that conforms with the goals and objectives set forth in the Colerain Township Comprehensive Plan. This comes to you as the first stage of a fairly lengthy process. There's an application to our department. We send out notices to applicable agencies, mostly county agencies. We send notice to surrounding property owners and post notice in the local paper. We have a zoning commission public hearing, which is the purpose of tonight's meeting. After this public hearing, you'll deliberate and make a recommendation to our township trustees, who will also schedule a public hearing, do notice to surrounding property owners, and have final say over the preliminary development plan. Once that is accomplished, the detailed plan comes back to this board, usually in about 2 to 3 months after tonight, and where all of the conditions that are set forth in your recommendation and code compliance issues are dealt with. That gets into details of landscaping, lighting, parking, exact elevation drawings of the building and all those kind of details. This is contrasted in a what we call single letter zone, which this is going from B1, which is a single letter zone. There's simply an application to our office. We review it for compliance with code, issue a zoning certificate, and the builder is basically off and running with their building permits. So that's kind of process. This particular property is located on Springdale Road, just east of Colerain Avenue and west of Niagara. It's on the south side of Springdale Road. This is an aerial photo of the site. It currently has parking or pavement over most of the site. This formerly contained a restaurant. This illustrates the approximate location. The restaurant was up towards Springdale Road with most of the parking located behind it. It's surrounded by offices to the north and south, or I guess it'd be sort of east and west of the site on the same side of Springdale Road. Across the street, there's a bank, there's some restaurants, a little bit of retail and personal service type things. To the back, there's a church and some single-family residences. The property is currently zoned B2, which is general business. The proposed district is planned development residential. We have 4 classifications of planned districts. There's residential, commercial, industrial, and then we have a mixed-use category. But this is residential. To the east of the site, it's zoned R6, which is urban residential. It's mostly single family. You can do 2 family depending on lot sizes. Also, a conditional use in the R6 is churches, and there is a church that abuts this property to the rear. To the south is zone B3. That's the shopping center that formerly had Kroger's but now is Big Lots. There's a store and lock facility behind that. That's zone B3, which is called Commerce District. In the Colerain Comprehensive Plan, this falls within what's called the Colerain Corridor character area. The location is actually within what's called the commercial corridor, sort of the core corridor of Colerain Avenue. There are land use guidelines and appropriate and unsuitable land uses identified. The ones that might be appropriate to this, it says the density of any new residential uses should reflect the developments of similar uses within the character area. And the character area for Colerain Avenue is primarily fairly intense business type uses. Number 5 in there, it says encourage the development of mixed use developments or town center along Colerain Avenue corridor that will incorporate pedestrian scaled environments with a mixture of commercial, office, and high-density residential uses. Such development should be designed to create a focal point for the township. And then under appropriate land uses, attached housing is one of those uses, and also mixed-use development, including residential, office, and commercial uses. This is an aerial photograph, sort of looking southward on the site. You can see the pavement. The proposal in this case is to remove all of that pavement and basically redevelop the site from scratch, I guess you could call it. You can actually see the footprint of where the building was in the foreground. Let me get my little pointer ready so I can have that available. This was the location of the restaurant. I have other photographs. This is actually what that restaurant looked like. It was demolished about 6 years ago, and the properties remained vacant ever since then. This restaurant building was pretty close to the right-of-way of Springdale Road, somewhat in keeping with other buildings in the area. And this is a site looking from Springdale Road. There's a couple cell towers that are directly adjacent but not on this property. There's offices and somewhat low-key retail on either side of the property. It's another view where the driveway comes into the site. This is the church that borders the property to the rear. We kind of noticed that there's a gap in the fence, and they built a sidewalk fairly recently into the site. I don't know if they're using it for overflow parking, but it actually makes a nice pedestrian connection between the Northbrook neighborhood, which is to the rear, and Springdale Road. And we'll talk about walkability in a little bit. This is also the rear of the property where it abuts a single family. There's a pretty deteriorated privacy fence in there, and it's overgrown with somewhat scrubby vegetation. The proposal is to put a new privacy fence up and do some actual landscaping along there, perhaps saving some of the more mature trees, but most of this is sort of scrub and underbrush. This is the property directly to the west. It has a daycare center in it and the base of the cell towers in this. This is the other building that's to the west, sort of professional office type uses. To the east, there's another strip center that has a variety of services. Recently it had a bank, but they've moved out of that. Looking east on Springdale Road, there are no sidewalks in this section of Springdale Road, even though it is identified as a high priority area for new sidewalks. This particular development will install sidewalks as part of the plan. However, you can see from the sort of wear in the dirt that this is fairly heavily trafficked with pedestrians, and there probably is a need to get sidewalk connectivity, and it's looking the opposite direction, westward. On the opposite side of the street, we have a small section of sidewalk that's in front of the Cincinnati Police Credit Union, which is a newer building, and of course with new buildings, commercial buildings, we do get sidewalks constructed. You can see from the signs that there's a variety of personal services, dentistry, pediatric dentistry, etc. Across the street there is a food market. Let me see what else was in there. There's a barber shop and a diner. Oops, and zoom out. Here we go. This is a street view of the houses that abut the property to the rear, single-family houses and the church. And that brings us to the site plan for the proposal. The proposal is to build a single 4-story building with 60 units for elderly housing. This would be a mixture of 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom units. It would have parking, landscaping, a little bit of buffering. One of our recommendations is to see perhaps some more buffering with the final development plan. And this is a little bit closer view of this. Oh, and the overall plan again. This was submitted as an example for the proposed architectural style of this building. It has a little bit of an urban flair to it. Most of the buildings on Colerain Avenue, actually, we only have, I think, one 4-story building. That's the Huntington Bank building. But this is sort of in keeping with the scale of that type building. And the floor plans, they submitted a plan. One of them is for a 1-bedroom unit, one's for a 2-bedroom unit. With the final development plan, we'll find out a little bit more about the mix as to how many of each type of unit we would have. Then we can do some more comparison on parking requirements and so forth. But with what they're showing for a 1-bedroom apartment, we would require 1 parking space. 2 bedrooms, we would require 2 parking spaces. They're providing basically 1.5 parking spaces per unit, which kind of averages out about right. But when we find out the detail on the architecturals, we'll know pretty sure what the parking expectation is. Now, our zoning requirements don't necessarily differentiate independent living senior housing, which really has its own unique needs. So fortunately, with the planned district, we can tailor parking requirements to really match what the expected needs going to be. Staff findings, well, before I get into that, let me go back. We had made some notes regarding the plan. We did send this out to surrounding agents, or to various agencies, and I'll have a list of those, but one of them was Hamilton County Engineer. We received that report just right before sending this report out. And 2 things that they noted on that, they would need to do a traffic impact study for this development to determine if Springdale Road, in fact, has the capacity to accommodate this development, and is this an appropriate location to have the driveway access and so forth. So that would need to be undertaken before we go to the final development plan. Second, they have asked for right-of-way dedication, and they've stipulated 50 feet from the center line. We got out our tax maps and tried doing some measurements from the center line, and because of the way the dedication of right-of-ways occurred on Springdale Road, the right-of-way just weaves in and out substantially in this section. I believe that the impact is going to be they will have to dedicate about 5 feet of additional right-of-way, which will impact the front yard setback of the building, and things may have to move around a little bit, but 5 feet's not insurmountable in that. Also, sidewalks will be required along Springdale Road. When there is a recommendation that we have mixed-use development along the Colerain corridor, one of the key things with that is that you have good pedestrian accessibility and walkability of the area when we have clusters of uses. We've seen the recent proposal for Northgate Mall that looks at trying to integrate more housing into the Northgate Mall site, so that there's sort of a symbiotic relation that the people living there support the businesses that are there, and the people living there have the benefits of close services, so that you don't necessarily have to get into a car to go out to eat or to go pick up some small things from the grocery and so forth, get a haircut, those types of things. And within this location, I put in a staff report that within 500 feet of this development, there is a food market, there's a barber, beauty shop, restaurants, and general home goods retailer. 500 feet's a pretty easy walk. Within 1,000 feet, that's less than a quarter mile, there's a drugstore, bookstore, financial services, more restaurants, and those types of things. So getting into the findings on this, the first is that the PD and preliminary development plan are consistent with the adopted Colerain Township Land Use Plan and Colerain Township Comprehensive Plan. That I just reviewed the section that is calling for this area to have mixed use with high-density residential. This is high-density residential. Proposed uses will have a beneficial effect on the community. With the aging population of Colerain Township, there's greater demand for affordable, independent living housing within close walking distance and to support services, retail, and restaurants. There is a movement for people to try to age in place in Colerain Township. A lot of people are living in single-family homes. At a certain point, the care and maintenance of that gets to be a little more taxing, so people choose to live in an environment that has low maintenance, basic services included, those types of things. The internal streets and primary and secondary roads that are proposed are properly interconnected with the surrounding and existing road network. This requirement really pertains to things like subdivisions where you have internal roads. This basically has no internal road, it just has a parking lot. It is designed to meet Colerain design standards for a parking lot, and aisle access, and so forth. Number 4, the site will be accessible from public roads that are generally adequate to carry the traffic that will be imposed upon them by the proposed development, and the streets and driveways on the site will be adequate to serve the residents or occupants of the proposed development. This does have access to Springdale Road. The real proof of this is going to be with the traffic impact study that will be submitted to the county engineer for review. Number 5, the minimum common open space areas have been designated and duly transferred to a legally established homeowners association where applicable, or have been dedicated to and accepted by Colerain Township or other public quasi-public agencies as provided within subsection 9.3.7. This particular development consists of a single lot, so the common open space is basically the open space or green space that is contained within the site. If we had multi-parcel developments or like a single-family subdivision, common open space is usually dedicated to a homeowners association. But since this is all under one ownership to start with, it is by definition common, I guess, to the residents who live there. Number 6, the preliminary development plan is consistent with the intent and purpose of the resolution, in particular in furtherance of the purpose of the planned district as set forth in section 9.3.1. And this senior housing by itself would not be permitted in any of our zoning districts in Colerain Township. Even our multifamily district only allows that for 4 units per parcel. So pretty much if you're to do this type of multifamily development in Colerain Township, you have to go the planned district route. And that's the route that they're taking tonight. And then 7, the preliminary development plan has been transmitted to all other agencies and departments charged with the responsibility of review. We send it to Hamilton County Stormwater and Infrastructure, Colerain Township Fire, Hamilton County GIS, Hamilton County Soil and Water Conservation, ODOT, Hamilton County Engineer, and Metropolitan Sewer District. As you'll recall, earlier this year, we sort of opted out of the formerly state-required procedure that we had to go through Hamilton County Regional Planning. As of a year ago, they really don't have jurisdiction over these developments, so we are not sending them the plans for review. Staff's recommendation for this is for approval of this preliminary development plan and zone change from B2 to PDR, subject to the following conditions. Number one, that the final development plan includes some buffering and landscaping along the property lines, side property lines, to provide separation to the adjacent parking lots to the extent possible. And number two, that the final building elevations be in keeping with the designs submitted with the preliminary development plan. It somewhat goes without saying because the code requires it, but the final development plan needs to closely resemble the preliminary development plan that you see before you tonight in terms of the density, intensity, and use, that it would be 60 units plus or minus a few, parking arrangement about the same, and so forth. So that is the proposal before us. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Commissioners, questions or comments to staff? Go ahead, Mark.
You're saying this is going to be for retirement, a retirement community.
Correct. Well,
Can you tell somebody you can't move in there because you're not 60?
actually, they can stipulate ages if it's specifically designed for the elderly. That's one of the categories where age restriction is permissible.
Commissioner Faring, that may be a question that's better
Oh.
answered by the actual the applicant. They may know more about the specifics of their operation.
Good evening, Planning Commission members. Thanks for your time tonight. My name's Pete Schwigerot. I'm with MVH Development, 9100 Centerpoint Drive, Westchester, Ohio, 45069. Related to your question, yeah, we will be deed restricting the property age 55 plus. We average in this type of development, we have a couple thousand units of this type of senior housing. We do probably average a 78-year-old resident. So typically you are catering to true retirees that are downsizing, have needs that where they need a little more care and attention. And so we are independent living, the first step in the continuum of care, and our goal is to keep seniors independent by providing a housing unit that meets all their accessibility needs, but also by providing programming and servicing. So we'll be doing curb-to-curb transportation, in-home meals, light housekeeping. We don't do health care ourselves, but we do help assist our residents in linking to health care so that they can stay independent longer.
Okay, and this is a 4-story building,
Yes, sir.
elevators?
Elevator, yeah. Just a real quick background on our company. We've been doing housing now for 20 years, over 20 years. Developed, owned, managed over 6,000 units in about 16 states. And I only mention that to speak to our ability to perform and build what we say we're going to build. I think a more important feature is we are a long-term owner. The very first one we built is in Lawrenceburg, 25 plus years old. We still own it. We still manage it. And just 4 years ago, completed an $11 million renovation of it. So we do take great pride in caring for our facilities and taking care of our buildings and our residents.
Okay. We're back to you, Mr. Faring. You had other questions you wanted to ask staff?
I just had those two, and then one other one just with the parking situation. If they do 60 units at 1.5, you're at 90. I think the plan was showing 75, so parking is going to be a real issue.
Yeah, depending on that mix of 1 to 2 bedroom units.
That's all I have.
Commissioners, any other questions or comments for staff before we go back to our applicant and let him speak more?
I've got a comment. I suspect that the traffic study will show it, but I presume Hamilton County is asking for a 50-foot setback for a reason. And having just familiar with Springdale Road, I can see that expanding sometime in the future. I would hope we're not building a building here that 10 years from now has got a street coming right up to the front door. And that's just a little bit of a concern.
Yeah. That's exactly why we do the traffic impact study, is so that scenario does not happen. So the county engineer will predict the amount of right-of-way that they will need in the long term. And they're calling it 50 feet from the center line to the right-of-way. and then the building is set back, 25, 30 feet from there.
Springdale Road is a county road, or?
Correct.
Okay. So if there's any future development of Springdale Road, that would be a county issue?
Correct.
Okay.
And that's certainly a valid point and something we can look at on the final development plan. So again, this is kind of that first stage where we look at the concept and say, okay, is this good? But maybe that's something that, a condition that the commission, if they vote to approve it, says, we'd like to see that done before the final development plan, or see that addressed in the final development plan.
Okay.
Certainly very good feedback.
Other comments, questions for staff?
Will there be entrance from Colerain and Springdale?
Pedestrian entrance to the building.
Cars.
Oh, cars will be only from Springdale Road.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Westfall, any comments or questions?
No, sir.
Okay. Mr. Schweigernach, if you'd like to make a further presentation?
Thank you so much, and I apologize, I jumped ahead of myself as I answered the question. Again, Pete Schweigernach with NVH Partners. We're excited to be here. Kind of spoke to the company and our ability to develop senior housing. We had done some analysis on the demand for the need for senior housing in the market. We really looked at Hamilton County as a whole, but then in particular submarkets. And as expected, number one in Colerain Township, the 55-plus demographic is the fastest growing demographic in the community, and will do so and continue to do so over the next 15 years. My grandmother grew up here on Lapland Avenue, right down off of Colerain on further south. And she was fortunate enough that she had 10 children that all grew up here in Colerain, that all took turns taking care of her and making sure she could stay independent as long as she could. And unfortunately, though, many of our seniors in our community just don't have that type of support system. And staying independent is a very key feature that we take great pride in making sure we help our residents do so, because the next step in the transition of continuum care is to assisted care, nursing care, memory care, which all have diminished quality of life for residents, but also cost substantially more. Staying in one of our independent living units, your rent's $700-800. If you need that assisted nursing care, you're talking about $3,000 to $4,000 a month, and also a situation where you're not necessarily living in conditions where you have your privacy and the amenities you want. So we take great pride in creating a development that will be 100% accessible. Elevated buildings, those are backed up by the have backup power systems, and 100% accessible units. We will build this with what's called universal design features, which are lower countertops, wider hallways, wider doors, additional light, things that help make residents of all ages or mobility have accessible or usability within their unit. We'll be building to enterprise green building standards, so it'll be a super high energy efficient building envelope. Energy Star appliances, hopefully you could see from the floor plans. Anything you would expect in your own home would be in these homes. Just a little more compact of a square foot. Walk-in closets, open floor plans, fully amenitized kitchens, in-unit laundry facilities. On the first floor, though, we also will have full-time on-site managers, maintenance staff that's there on call 24 hours a day for residents. We also have a community room, a business center, a fitness center, a theater room, and service coordination offices where we provide that linkage to the transportation, the meals, and housekeeping and other services and programs that our residents need. So it's kind of a one-stop shop. We get around 40% of our renters out of ownership. It's folks who are simply unable to keep up on their home or just need to downsize. They don't need the space. They can't keep up on the house. And we can create a one-stop shop where they're paying a single rent, paying their electric bill. We're taking care of everything for them from a service and maintenance perspective, snow, trash, and then they also have services on site that can help benefit them as well. So we like the corridor. We think it's important to have walkability. We love being so close to the mall. We think it will help compel and further those plans. The more people we can bring near your core, the more we're going to be able to, I think, help encourage other development of the core, whether that be other commercial, other residential. I'm excited about seeing that the township has the vision to really try to create some density around the mall. It will help the mall transform and help the area transform. We really do see this as an opportunity to kind of create a gateway. That's why we've kind of dubbed it Gateway Seniors. As you can imagine, you're traveling down Springdale Road from the east to the west, and you're coming into the core of the commercial core. And this building, the way it's angling, gives us a great opportunity to kind of present the building forward. We didn't want to have a bunch of parking out front and then the building in the rear. We wanted to try and put the face forward, hide the parking, and kind of create this kind of monument gateway statement point where we can really use it as a monument to let folks know you're entering the corridor here. The walkability for residents. We did try to reach out to residents in the neighborhood. We knocked on some doors. Didn't really get any direct feedback from the locals adjacent, but we did last month go and meet with the Northbrook Neighborhood Organization, and through their membership, they had dispersed that out. And I'm going to guess there was maybe 10 to 12 residents that attended, and they were very excited about our plans to do this development. They did write a support letter. I hope if that hasn't been forwarded on, I'm sure we'd be happy to get you a version of that. You know, I think that they see a need for new options in the community, and we were very happy to see that they were willing to support our efforts here. In total, we're talking about a development that's going to be around $11 million of a new investment in the core, and we are a tax-bearing entity, and we're paying property taxes and bring this property back to life that has really sat vacant for quite some time with a for sale sign on it. So thanks for giving me some time to present, and I'm certainly happy to answer any additional questions you might have.
Okay, thank you, sir. If you want to just stay there in case we have commissioners who want to ask questions or comments.
I have a question. Is this subsidized housing?
So we do not have any HUD involvement, Section 8 involvement. The public housing is not, or the housing authority is not involved. We do have affordability requirements. So the goal of this is we use a state funding source to provide units at an affordable level. So our residents pay their own rent. We're just required to keep them at a rent that's seemed reasonable. So for example, if a 2-bedroom apartment might rent for $1,000 a month in your community, we might have to rent it to that senior for $800 a month so that they can make ends meet. So we target 80% the median income of the county. So really seniors making up to $45,000+ a year can meet the income criteria. And as you can imagine, as a senior, that's a retiree. Most of our residents meet that definition very easily. We did do the market analysis, and there are 1,800 households within a 3-mile ring here that meet that definition, meaning they're 55 plus and meet that 80% AMI income definition. So there's 1,800 households in your community right now that could benefit from this, but don't have access to it as it stands.
Okay, thank you.
So listening to your presentation, I think you've answered my question. These are all rental units.
Rentals, yes,
There's
sir.
Nobody can purchase it.
No.
Okay. Okay, and the $1,000 that you just said, was that just a figure you threw out, for example? Do you have any idea what they would cost?
So we're hopeful that we'll be delivering 1 beds at around $700 a month and 2 beds around $800 a month. I would say if we were market conditions, there are certainly, hopefully will be several $100 rent discounts to market. And I know it's hard to kind of compare because a lot of the product out here, unfortunately, that's the challenge in Colerain, is there hasn't been a whole lot of new construction of rental product. And, so really, there's not a whole lot to compare it to from a new perspective, but that will all be established as we're finalizing our market study.
Okay. And I realize this will come with the final development plan, but the rendering that you showed us is going to be brick?
Yeah, that's the building. So on those 2 faces, the key, well, we'll say it 3 faces. So there's the small face fronting Springdale, and then the long face that's fronting east on Springdale. Those are your 2 most visible sides. And that's what you're kind of looking at here. So it's a 4-story building. We're going to give it a 3-story brick treatment with 2-tone brick. And then that upper 4th floor is done in a hardy board. And then on the rear of the building, we do tone that down. On the rear, maybe that brick might go up 1 to 2 stories, and there's a little more hardy board. So these are the front-facing sides, and this is exactly what we're performing. The only difference is this was borrowed from another development where our L-shaped building was more on a 90-degree. And you might notice from the site plan, we're more on a 45-degree. So the angle that building comes together will be a little different than this, but the architectural elements, the building materials that you're seeing will be consistent.
Okay, thank you.
I have one more question. The location of where you're proposing, it's going to be 4 floors, correct? What view would they have? I mean, what would they see if they were on the 4th floor?
Well, you know, we got mostly one-story stuff around us. So the good news is you're going to be able to see over everything and see out. There's surrounding single family they're going to look over. They're going to look over some of the commercial. They'll probably see the mall and portions of the mall, depending on what floor you're in. So certainly we're facing outward. We're trying to face the units outwards, and so those units are going to be looking out over the corridor.
Okay.
Commissioners?
We did try to create a little core internal spaces. We get that we're dense here, and the goal is when you're doing redevelopment, and our green building design says, look, if you're going to use a redevelopment site, make sure you're using it to its fullest. It's a good opportunity to repurpose the site and make sure it's getting utilized properly. And so we do want to be intense. That'll also help the core and the rest of the development activities you're trying to do in your core. But we did create some really unique little space. So we're going to have a nice little outdoor shelter. It's a 15 by 15 gazebo that will have picnic shelters. We'll have a grill out there, grills out there. We're going to have community gardens, so we'll be doing raised beds, gardens where folks can do plantings and stuff like that. Internally, like I said, we have the community room, and there's internal spaces too.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioners, any other questions or comments for our applicant? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
At this time, we need to have a motion to open public hearing to give anybody in the audience an opportunity to speak. Can we have a motion, please?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Okay, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Faring?
Yes.
Mr. Gehring?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Westfall?
Aye.
Mr. Grody?
Yes. The floor is open for public hearing, so those of you who are present, I know there was only one person that signed up on the list, and that person has already spoken, but do either of you wish to make comments? If you could come forward to the microphone, please, and state your name. And would you spell your name and your last name, please, and give us your address?
Kathy Moore, M-O-H-R, 11986 Walden Drive. And my question is, what's the square footage of 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom, and will utilities be included in the rent?
Okay. For our benefit, sir, can you repeat the question, because
Yes,
she was direct?
absolutely. I'm going to answer the question on what the square footage is expected to be for the units. And the second part of that question was?
Are any utilities?
Utilities, what's paid. Okay, so yes, the 1-bedroom units are around 750, 2 beds are around 950 square feet. And as far as utilities, it's an all-electric system. All our residents pay is their rent, electric, and then if they want cable and phone. A lot of times, to be honest, residents don't do cable and phone anymore with streaming services and cell phones these days.
Okay. And I did notice that each unit has their own laundry facilities.
Yes.
Mrs. Moore, you still have the floor. Is there anything else that you would like to ask or add?
That was my only question.
Okay. Sir, in the back, are you? Okay. Hearing none, could we have a motion to close the public hearing, please?
I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing.
We have a second, please? Second. Okay, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Faring?
Yes.
Mr. Gehring?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Westfall?
Aye.
Mr. Grody?
Yes. Okay, commissioners, at this time, do you have any other questions or comments for staff or the applicant? Hearing none, can we please entertain a motion for this item on the agenda?
I motion that we approve case ZA 2019-08, Gateway Senior Lots, as presented with the stipulations that are presented as well.
Okay, could we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay. Commissioners, any further discussion of this motion, and does everybody understand the motion that has been made? Any other comments or questions? Okay, could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Faring,
Yes.
Mr. Garing,
Yes?
Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Westfall,
Aye.
Mr. Grody.
Yes, the motion carries. Thank you, sir.
Appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Okay. What would be your estimate of when this would open?
We would hope to start construction October next year. And that would be a one-year build, 15-month build to option.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, we're back to our agenda. Any items on number 6, 7, 8, or 9, or 10?
No. I do have a couple announcements to make.
Okay,
As it pertains to next year's board, we do have a couple changes. So every year, staff is required to take the, as you all know, you all do staggering terms. Somebody falls off every year. Every December, unbeknownst to me till mid-December, staff is required to send out applications and take recommendations to the Board of Trustees for new positions to fill vacant positions. So I do want to announce the new positions for the coming year. Mr. Garing will become a full member of the board, and that was adopted and approved by the Board of Trustees in December. Mr. Westfall will move to an alternate position, along with a new alternate named Kevin Wilson. We interviewed Kevin, he's a really great applicant, younger guy. I think he works at Miami University. He's got numerous degrees. He lives, over in the Northbrook Groesbeck area. A lot of energy. Again, I think he'll bring a really nice perspective to the board. So he's going to be an alternate. So those are the new changes. As you all know, you are required to, in order to conduct business in January, you'll be required to elect new officers. So you'll have to elect a new chairperson and a vice chairperson to lead that meeting in order to conduct business. So as an FYI, that will be coming up in January. And then the last thing I did want to bring up is, so one of the big items that staff will be working on in 2020 is going to be the new comprehensive plan. The current comprehensive plan we have is well over a decade old. It's 15 plus years old. The time is now to take that project across the finish line. Over the past few years, we've been taking an incremental approach to this, where we're kind of just piecemealing pieces to it. 2020 is the year that I want to take this as the director and get it done. There's so much that's changed since 2007. The economy's changed. Development's changed. The township's changed, for better and for worse. So I think in order to really make sure that we're putting our best foot forward and the brightest vision for the future of the township forward, that needs to be a priority for staff. So we've made that a major priority for our initiatives this year to get that done. We've got a lot of little pieces done. There's been other things that have, outside of some of our planning efforts, that have been done. But again, the time is now to really dig deep, pull those pieces together, and get something really, really awesome for the township, so that will guide us into the future. There'll be more information on that as we kind of roll into the new year. Some of the highlights is that, we'll have a project website. So that means that all the information we have will be public facing. Everybody will be privy to up-to-date information on the progress of the plan, what's happening with the plan, how they can get involved, what the next steps of the plan are. We'll have a project website so you can access it from anywhere. So that's one of the big things that I kind of wanted to announce tonight. we're going to be doing a massive public outreach. We're going to have a rotating rotunda series. We're going to be doing public input here. We're going to have boards up at the mall. I mean, it'll be a very robust process. Unfortunately, it'll probably mean a lot of extra hours for this team, but it's something that we need to get done as a township, and we're committed to getting that done. So there'll be plenty of opportunities for some of you as board members to be a part of this, and we'll continue to keep you updated on that. But coming January 2020, we are going to be hitting the road hard. I mean, we're going to be hitting the ground running. So be ready, be prepared. I hope you all want to get involved, and you'll, share all the information with your colleagues and friends in the township.
It's good to hear, and we wish you well in that endeavor.
Yes.
It's a big endeavor, but I'm sure you'll get it done.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Sure you'll get it done.
Yeah, the time is now. It's been years in the making, so we're excited.
Mr. Kohler, any comments, announcements?
We do have 2 items for your January agenda that
Okay.
are in the works.
Okay. Mr. Urbanzik, any comments? Okay, commissioners, any announcements that you would like to make or comments? No?
Merry Christmas.
On behalf of the commissioners, I'd personally like to take the opportunity to publicly thank Mr. Westfall for all his years serving on the commission itself. We hope that we will continue to see you in the alternate position, and but thank you for everything that you've done over the years for the commission in Colerain Township.
Thank you.
Okay. I will not be able to be at the January meeting, unfortunately, and I would like to, but we will be away. And I would like the commission to just be aware that at that meeting, as Mr. Iona said in relation to election of officers, that I would like to be considered for any of the offices if you feel that that is appropriate. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. I did offer if Colerain Township wanted to fly their Lear jet down to where we're going to be and pick me up and bring me back. But I understand it's out of gas right now.
I'm gonna have it in Hawaii, so I don't.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Can you just make a loop around?
Yeah.
Okay. And finally, happy holidays to everyone here present this evening, and to those of you who are tuning in and listening. We hope everybody has a wonderful holiday. So with that, could we please have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, all in favor of adjourning, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The meeting is closed at about 10 minutes till 7 or a little bit thereof.